No Skill Customs. Hey, it's me, Bert, and I'm here to present to you every character in the Carbon Freeze Chamber from Empire Strikes Back. Let's start with the Ugnaughts, and there's one thing you should know about Ugnaughts.
Always
4.
there are no more, no less.
So in the Carbon Freeze Chamber you see 4, in the Boiler Room you see 4, and just walking down the hallway you see 4. But I believe there were 5 masks, because if you look, in the scene where they're walking through the halls, only one of the Ugnaughts has tusks. Yet in the Carbon Freeze Chamber and the Boiler Room, 2 Ugnaughts have tusks. So as you watch the Carbon Freeze Chamber, I think we can confidently say that the one Ugnaught that's not wearing an apron is one of the ones that has tusks. And one with an apron has tusks, and then the final 2, one has long brownish hair and one has shorter white hair. Hasbro hasn't made this variety of Ugnaughts. They've pretty much just made the tusked one in an all gray outfit, and then they've made the white-haired one with the blue outfit and apron. Those are Legacy Collection Build-A-Droid 28 and Build-A-Droid 43, respectively. Now, you may know that their heads are actually swappable because they have the same basic body. But did you know that their bodies are actually swappable too? Yes, these 2 figures come apart at the waist and have all sorts of interchangeable parts here. Now, what you could do if you wanted to is you could go and put together the classic Ugnaught that we know and love. You could put together a modern version of the vintage one by taking the apron off the blue guy, putting it on the waist of the gray guy, putting the torso back on, and putting the tusked Ugnauht's face back on. Now you got your own modern update. Problem is, now with the remaining Ugnaught parts, you got this guy. I mean, it kind of looks like he's got a little waist apron on, but I don't know. You might not think that that is that cool. So you could do this, paint him up, find another of the more pig-like faces, and you can make everyone's favorite Ugnaught from Jabba's Palace, Yakskit. So this is my Ugnaught lineup. I use Build-A-Droid number 28 just as he comes. I use 2 of Build-A-Droid 43 just as they are, and then I use my little combo here where the gray Ugnaught now has the apron on. Now, the argument could be made for having 2 Ugnaughts without aprons, because there are some behind-the-scenes photos that show a second Ugnaught kicking around who's not wearing an apron. And the argument could be made for using the Power of the Force 2 Ugnaught, because one thing you might notice is that the Ugnaughts with aprons on all have this longer skirt underneath. They're not just wearing pants, they have this skirt too. So, you know, toss this guy in there too if you want. And then, of course, there's Darth Vader. And I know you're wondering, well, can't I just use any Darth Vader figure as long as it has decent articulation? And the answer is, well, sort of. There's one sort of Darth Vader that you really want to avoid, otherwise you will be mocked by little old ladies on the street. Any Darth Vader figure that has the fabric over top of his chest armor is from A New Hope and Rogue One. But you guys already know that, right? Same thing if you see one that has red eyes. Darth Vader's helmet in A New Hope had red eyes, and that was faithfully reproduced in Rogue One. That's a telltale sign that you should not be using this Darth Vader in your Carbon Freeze playset. So which Darth Vader figure do we use for the Darth Vader figure in our setup? And a quick search on one of my favorite websites, JediBusiness.com, reveals that there are a lot of Darth Vaders. Darth Adler, come on, autocorrect. There are many Darth Vader figures to choose from. In fact, that's quite an understatement. So I've picked out 3 that work pretty well for different reasons. One is the Vintage Original Trilogy Collection Vader. And then the other two are actually different Black Series 3.75-inch Vaders. The vintage original trilogy collection Vader doesn't have the right color buttons, but he does have a little hole on his belt so he can put his lightsaber there. So that's a plus. I love the Revenge of the Sith Black Series Vader. His torso lights are wrong, but he has a sculpted on chain for his cape, which looks way better than anything else they've come up with. His helmet is one of the best sculpted Darth Vader helmets I've seen, and on top of that, it's super shiny just like it is in the movie. So I really love this Vader, plus he's really posable, which makes him ideal for fighting Luke Skywalker in the carbon freeze chamber if you're going to do that scene. Then the Black Series 3.75 Empire Vader, this is the one who came with the blast effect for the dining room scene. He's got a great shiny helmet as well. His torso lights are correct. He just has that weird chain thing sticking out of his neck, but other than that, he's a pretty decent figure too. Now, Hasbro has made some pretty sweet Stormtroopers in the last 2 years. There's, of course, the Vintage Collection Rogue One Stormtrooper on the left. There's the Stormtrooper that came with the carbon freeze chamber in the middle, and then there's Han Solo as a Stormtrooper. And I love all three of these figures. I personally believe that actually the Han Solo one is the most accurate. I just think the head size is about right compared to the real prop costume. But, you know, it's up to you. Each of them is a really good choice. There are 10 Stormtroopers in the scene. There are 4 that are already standing around when Vader's talking to Lando. There are 4 more that enter with Han, Leia, and Chewbacca. And then there are 2 that kind of show up on the top of the steps to kind of frame the scene. There's an Imperial officer standing around, but then also doing errands for Darth Vader. And they didn't make a figure of that official character, but Captain Nita works just fine. Then there's Lando Calrissian. Unfortunately, he has not had a new sculpt since the vintage original trilogy collection Lando Calrissian. He could really use an update, especially since he's one of my favorites. Then, of course, there's Lobot. Lobot was available in the original trilogy collection. A lot of people want a new Lobot figure. I actually like this one a bit, but yeah, he doesn't have much articulation at all. But, you know, there's so many other figures I'd like to see done first. Now on to Robert Alfred Fett, or Boba Fett as most people call him. With Boba Fett, you could go with the Evolution / Vintage Collection one. Pretty much the same sculpt, just different colors there. The other option is you could go with the 300th figure special edition Boba Fett, and finally Force Link 2 Boba Fett. The problem with the Vintage Collection one is I just don't like the helmet. The problem with the 300th one is he looks a little too active, and the problem with the Force Link 2 one is he's standing there with his hands at his side. But his helmet's awesome. I'm not really sure which one's best, but I did do a little video all about how you could make your own Ultimate Boba Fett with just a little bit of work. So check that out. Then we have 2 Bespin guards hanging out at the top of the stairs. The guys who played the Bespin guards actually were 2 men, Robert Young, who I could not find any pictures of or any information about, and Alan Harris. Alan Harris, however, is actually somewhat famous in the Star Wars world, having played Bossk, and he was also the model that the prototype for Boba Fett's costume was fit onto. He actually just passed away in 2020, sadly. But they've actually never made a figure of Alan Harris's Cloud City guard. So let's take a look at the 2 guards they have made figures of, because you know what? They're in silhouette the whole entire scene, so it doesn't really matter what they look like, really. So they're available in the Legacy Collection as Build-A-Droid number 50. They have the same number designation, even though they're 2 distinctly different figures. One is named Sergeant Edian, and the other one is an alien named Utris Mtak. Utris Mtak was never actually seen in the movie. It was a design that they decided not to use, the whole prosthetic alien parts. Perhaps, I think, because it looks a little Star Trek-y, but I don't really know what the reason was exactly. You can turn that alien guard into Alan Harris's Bespin guard character, whose name is Bislama Maril. You could turn into Bislama Maril by taking off the head from the Tantive 4 soldier, rebel trooper, and putting it just, you know, right on the neck peg. Now keep in mind the neck peg for the Bespin guard is a little bit bigger than the Tantive 4's neck peg. So it'll be a little wobbly if you try putting it back on the Tantive 4 body. That's all. Some other head swaps that look pretty good include the Hoss Soldier, just popping his head off. It works pretty nicely. Or you could try General Zod from the DC Multiverse collection. You do have to Dremel General Zod's head a little bit to make it fit quite right, though. But he still looks pretty good. Then, of course, we have Han Solo. That's what the scene's all about, right? He is vintage collection number 136. It came with the Jabba's Palace playset. He's a bit better than the Black Series one. I think that maybe they have the same exact head sculpt, but the paint on at least my vintage collection one is far superior to the Black Series one. Black Series one, they mispainted his eyes too low. Then in May 2021, we're going to get a new Princess Leia Bespin. And hopefully she'll be pretty good. They've never released an actual picture of it. That's a digital face there. So it's a digital rendering of the face, not an actual figure. So we'll see. I'm hoping it looks great though. For Chewbacca, I used the vintage original trilogy collection figure that came on a Return of the Jedi card back. He was also re-released a number of times, including a Black Series 3.75-inch figure. On the packaging of the carbon freeze chamber, it looks like they used the vintage collection C-3PO, and someone must have broke it to fit into Chewbacca's bag. But you could just purchase the Cloud City Capture Chewbacca from the Saga collection because he comes with a already broken C-3PO. Then, of course, you need Han Solo and Carbonite. Now, the vintage collection carbon freezing chamber actually comes with one, but they decided to make the frame around him lighter than him and the kind of plastery carbonite that he's embedded in. Whereas in the movie, I feel like the frame itself should be darker. And if you look at the Black Series Han Solo and Carbonite, and then also the Han Solo and Carbonite that came with the Jabba's Palace playset, they both have that darker frame. The only difference between them is the Jabba's Palace playset version. Han Solo looks to be a little bit shinier. Now, the very last figure you might want is Luke in his Bespin outfit. That is vintage collection number 4. He was available in 2010, and then in 2020 they came out with a photoreal version. However, the photoreal version isn't always that great. Mine has eyes that don't line up, and the lips were painted just a smidge too low and makes him look a little monkey-like. Well, that sums up every character in the Empire Strikes Back Carbon Freeze room. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe so you know when the next video I make comes out. Whoa, we lost my footing. Whoa!